Hey, fellow horror fans. This is Troy Escamilla, the director of Party Night and Mrs. Claus, and you are listening to Anthony T's Horror Show. Enjoy.
Welcome to another edition of Anthony T's Horror Show. I'm Anthony T. In this edition, I will be having an open letter to the CEO of MGM because, well, they've driven me crazy enough to the point where their recent news warranted an open letter. So, you will get my open letter shortly to the CEO of MGM, even though he'll probably never hear this. But still, it's a good way to get my thoughts on what they're doing out there. I'll also debut a new segment on the show called the Indie Roundup. That will be a segment where I review 2 films on the film festival scene. In the first edition, I will be reviewing Hang Up. If you remember, in episode 17, I interviewed the star of the film, Astrida Olza. So you will be getting my thoughts on that film. And you'll also get my thoughts on Michael J. Epstein's and Sofia Coppola's latest film, Clickbait. Those 2 have directed such films in the past, such as 10 and Blood of the Tribads. So definitely check out my reviews of those 2 films later on in the show. And also, I'm going to have a change of pace on this edition, as I'll be interviewing director Buddy Cooper, who directed the 1984 cult slasher film The Mutilator, aka For Break. But first, the news. Last time I mentioned on this episode that Full Moon Features was doing a project called Deadly 10. I also mentioned that one of the films will be Subspecies 5 Blood Rise. Now I can also tell you what are the other films in this lineup. And this does look like a killer lineup. The first film you got is Blade the Iron Cross. This film I believe is supposed to pick up after the last Puppet Master film, produced by Full Moon, just to clarify. Next, you got Charles Band's latest film, Bride of Head of the Family. It's the sequel to the outrageous 1996 film Head of the Family. And it's being directed by Charles Band, who coincidentally also directed Head of the Family under the name Robert Talbot. Then you got Necropolis Legion, which is directed by Christopher Alexander. Then Blood Rise Subspecies 5, which I mentioned last show, which is directed by Ted Nicolai. Then Halloween Night, which is directed by Danny Draven, who's done such films as Horror Vision and Real Evil. You also have The Hourglass, which is directed by Ryan Brookhart. You have Femme Alien Cosmic Crush, film that's a part of the Surrender Cinema line that they have, which is directed by Lindsay Schmitz. You have The Shadow Heart Curse, which currently at this time doesn't have a director. You have The Grim Rapper, directed by William Butler. Yes, that William Butler. That was in Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead. He's also directed films such as The Ginger Dead Man, 3 Saturday Night Cleaver. He's also directed Demonic Toys, Personal Demons as well for Full Moon. And the film that yours truly has been looking forward to the most out of all the films in the Deadly 10 series, Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Bolorama 2. Yes, they're making a sequel to the 80s cult classic Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Bolorama. The sequel will be directed by David Dakota as he returns to the director's chair. Sharing directing responsibilities with him on this film is none other than Brink Stevens. Yes. The same Brink Stevens that was in the first Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Bolorama. The film is also scheduled to have appearances from Linnea Quigley and Michelle Bauer. This film I'm so excited for. I wonder how they're going to pull it off. But I also like the fact that this film is also co-directed too by Brink Stevens. This is definitely one of my most anticipated films for next year. Seriously. That film and Subspecies 5. And the major thing about the Deadly 10 is you can watch the behind the scenes of all these films as they're being made. You can go to deadly10.com for more information. But this is a very unique project, as I think for the first time you're actually going to see films being made in front of your eyes. I commend Charles Band for doing this, as this is very outside the box, and has really, I think, brought some interest back into Full Moon Features, which has been lacking the last couple of years. So, I cannot wait for this whole Deadly 10 series to be released on Valentine's Day next year. I'm hoping that this is the start of some sort of resurgence for Full Moon Features, as they've been kind of down the last couple of years, as you haven't seen many new films from them, if any. So I really cannot wait for this project to be released early next year. It'd be interesting to see if all 10 films get made, but this is going to be an interesting project to keep an eye on. Now, convention news, CT Horror Fest recently announced that Tobin Bell will be co-headlining their show on September 14th in Nantucket, Connecticut. This is definitely a convention that looks like it's going to be a good one. Can't wait for that. And also, ScareCon New England recently announced 2 guests. And I have to say, in my personal opinion, 2 major guests that really made yours truly smile. I'm talking about Damon Leone and David Howard Thornton joining the lineup for ScareCon New England. I love the film Terrifier. I was so happy when this was announced. And they will also have a rare photo op at the convention as well, in which David Howard Thornton will get in the clown makeup and suit for photo ops. This photo op might sell out, so I would highly recommend you get your tickets over at scarecon.com. I will also have a major announcement regarding ScareCon New England at the end of this episode, so stay tuned to the end, as I will have an announcement that I might be doing something at ScareCon New England. So stay tuned. With that, that's the news. Have a podcast that you want to promote? Well, if you're interested in swapping commercials, you can promote your show here on Anthony T's Horror Show, and in return I will promote your commercial on my show as well. For more information, contact me at Anthony T's Horror Show at gmail.com. Warning. The following commentary doesn't represent the views of Dark Discussions or the Dark Discussions Network. In other words, there are my views only. Welcome back to Anthony T's Horror Show. Recently, you heard me complaining a lot about what's going on at MGM and Orion Pictures. You know I constantly complain about the Child's Play reboot. And don't get me started with that trailer, because that's another rant that will be coming in episode 20, because I just don't have time for Child's Play this episode, so I really don't want to talk about it. I want to talk more about it in a calm way. I haven't figured out how to do it yet, so you will definitely get my thoughts on the Child's Play trailer on the next episode, because I just don't get this film. I really don't. I don't see why people are so excited for this film, because I'm for remakes, don't get me wrong, but if you're messing around with the original formula and just trying to neglect it, then I have a problem with it. But I'll save that for episode 20, because I think it's time to actually talk about MGM and Orion Pictures. Seriously. Because they seem to be remake crazy over there. You got the Child's Play remake coming up. You've got news about them remaking Night of the Comet. Now they've hired Joe and Anthony Russo, the duo behind Avengers Endgame. Recently in the news, their production company, AGBO Films, recently teamed up with MGM to oversee and develop remakes of the MGM library. Now, forget horror here, because I'm talking as a film fan. I don't want to see 10,000 remakes. Seriously. And what MGM is doing, I think, is tarnishing their legacy. Tarnished by opening their film library to the Russo brothers so they can remake whatever MGM films they want. And this does not sit well with me, as quite frankly, we may be seeing a lot of remakes coming up from MGM, and some of it may affect the horror genre as well. So it appears that I have to talk someone off the ledge here, and that means the CEO of MGM, as I have written an open letter pleading to the CEO of MGM to cancel this remake plan of his with the Russo brothers. Now, I know he's probably not going to listen to this podcast, but in the rarest of chance he listened to this podcast, this is what I would say to him. Dear CEO of MGM, hi, my name is Anthony T. I've been a big fan of films and your studio since you released some of the greatest horror films, whether it's in theaters or on DVD and Blu-ray. These include Child's Play, The Return of the Living Dead, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and one of my favorite guilty pleasure films of all time, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. But recently I've heard you're remaking Child's Play, Night of the Comet, and possibly Poltergeist again after remaking it 4 years ago. And this doesn't stop there, as you've recently hired Joe and Anthony Russo to oversee remaking some of your studio's properties, which may include more of your horror properties. I am writing this letter to tell you not to go down this road. I want to know MGM as the studio where the lion roar, not the studio of remakes. I don't need remakes of The Return of the Living Dead, Pumpkinhead, or any other horror properties, as the studio should be focusing on new stories, not rehashing films from its past for a new generation. Let them discover these classic films and see them in the way that it is meant to be seen. Remaking these films is not going to bring the studio back to its heydays. In fact, it may hurt the studio even more and make the studio look like the studio of remakes. I hope you take this into consideration, as it helps to keep these films the way it was meant to be enjoyed, and while in the process create new original films for people to enjoy. Sincerely, Anthony T. P.S. If you remake Return of the Living Dead, I most likely will have to boycott MGM.
Hey guys, this is Steve Christina. I'm the founder, owner, creator, and host of Super Retro Throwback Reviews. Are you looking for the best movie reviews, music reviews, video game reviews, and Comic-Con coverage all around? Well then look no further. Definitely check out Super Retro Throwback Reviews on YouTube and our new audio podcast, the new and improved Super Retro Throwback Reviews audio files version 2.0 on the following media distributors: Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify.
Class is over, John. Time for something new and improved.
Welcome back to Anthony T's Horror Show. I'm here with director Buddy Cooper, who directed the 1984 slasher film The Mutilator, which you can see on Shudder and is available on Blu-ray from Arrow Video. How you doing today, Buddy Cooper?
I'm well, Anthony. Thank you. I hope you are.
I'm doing good. What drew you to make The Mutilator?
I was a fan of horror movies, and I've always loved the movies. I always wanted to make movies, and I read an in-depth article in the New York Times about film schools. I was thinking about sending myself to film school, and the article closed by saying, if you get a chance to work on a movie, you'll learn more from working on one movie than you will in 4 years of film school. And I had saved some money up, so I said, well, I'll make a movie. That'd be easier than finding a job. So also at that time, 1/3 of the tickets, according to Weekly Variety, 1/3 of the tickets were being sold for horror pictures. So I was thinking, if I could make a low budget horror picture, I would learn how to make movies, and I would have a good chance of getting my money back. So I decided to make a slasher.
Now, what films influenced you to make and write the script for The Mutilator?
I'm not sure any particular films influenced me to make and write The Mutilator. I was a fan of gore movies, and it was more of an economic decision, thinking that I'd be able to get my money back than it was in reaction or in the following of any particular films.
The film is co-directed by John Douglas. What decided to bring him on to the film as a co-director?
The summer before we shot The Mutilator, John is a professor of film at the American University in Washington, D.C., and they were having a summer course on screenwriting and film production. So I knew I had written screenplays, and I thought I knew how to write one, and I knew something about making movies, but I went up to become better informed. And I met John that summer. He was teaching the screenwriting course, and we formed a good friendship. And he and I stayed in touch during the writing of the screenplay. And when it came time to shoot it, he offered to bring film students and graduate students and recently graduated students to the shoot, which he did. And when he came down to help and actually did some of the directing, so we talked about it, and he had earned a co-director's credit. So that's how that happened. He was very valuable in the pre-production and production.
What was the pre-production like for the film?
I'm not sure how to answer that. The hardcore pre-production, well, I'll skip over casting for the moment, but the hardcore pre-production began when the John sent Walker Pierce down to be the assistant director, and she started shaping things up for the shoot. And at the same time, the special effects team came on. That was about 6 weeks before the shoot, and they started getting the gags ready. So it was a busy time. The last 6 weeks prior to the shoot, we were busy. I don't know if that is what you're asking, but that's what it was.
Was there any difficulties during pre-production?
No, I had one person in the special effects team who didn't work out after one day, and I asked her to go home. And at that point, my good friend Ed Farrell came on in the special effects department. That was really the only problem we had in pre-production.
Did you have any challenges in finding funding to make this film?
That is an interesting question. As I said, I had saved some money. I had $84,000, and I thought I could make a movie for $84,000. And so we went into it, but that $84,000 lasted about a week. And then I maxed out my credit cards and went to Wachovia Bank at the time. I had a good relationship with Wachovia, and they wound up lending me the rest of the money on unsecured notes. So the answer is, I was worried about it, but I didn't really have any trouble finding funding because it was basically my money.
What was the filmmaking landscape like in your area during that?
Well, we're 90 miles north of Wilmington, North Carolina, and Wilmington was hot. There was a lot going on down there, but there was nothing going on around here. No, there was no filmmaking.
So pretty much this was the only film production going on at that time in that area.
That's right.
Okay, now your film was originally titled Fall Break. Yep. How did you come up with that title, and why was it changed to The Mutilator?
Around here, you may be familiar with the term spring break. Right now, everybody's on spring break. But around here, around Thanksgiving, there's a break in schooling, and around here it was called fall break. And so, and since these students are on their fall break, and fall break has an ominous feel to it, fall down, break something. That's what made me decide to call it fall break. And the reason it was changed to The Mutilator, when I was talking with the distributor in New York, he said, well, we need an ad campaign. I said, we got one. We made our own. We had everything. We had posters, TV spots, trailers, radio spots. He said, well, let me see it. So I showed him everything. And he said, but I got to tell you, it's shit top to bottom. He said, we need a new one. So he sent me to an advertising firm in Times Square, and they came up with the name for The Mutilator, and they came up with the concept for the poster.
Now, the film's casting in the film was very good. What was the casting process like?
The casting was fun. I started locally, and the guy Ben Moore was a friend, and I knew Ben was going to be in the picture, and didn't find anybody else at that time, so I moved to Greenville at East Carolina University, which had a drama department, and I looked for some people there and found Ruth Martinez there, but I still didn't have enough people. So we went to New York and had an open casting call where I picked up Matt Mittler and Francis Raines. Some model agency put me in touch with Jack Chatham, who played Big Ed. And these people just all seemed to be right for the roles. Then we got back down, and Ben had a friend, Connie Rogers, and we asked Connie to play Sue. And finally, we picked up Bill Hitchcock, and that was basically the cast. The woman who was hired to play the mother who gets shot in the beginning called 2 days before we were going to shoot and said that she was a good Christian woman and she just didn't think that she could be in a movie like The Mutilator. At that, the film was in the camera, and so I went to my wife Pam, who was doing a lot already. She was helping in wardrobe, She was catering some of the meals, meanwhile running her own business, taking care of 2 small children. And I went to Pam. I said, Pam, I need you to do one more thing for me. And she said, what? I said, I need for you to get shot and die. And she said, okay. And so she did. And she did great. She was excellent. And that's basically the casting. Well, except for, I say Ralph. Let me say that the hardest role to cast was the role of Ralph. And we were about 2 weeks away from shooting. Ben Moore and I were in my office talking about it. Who are we going to get to play Ralph? And one of my secretaries came in and said, there's a guy out here. Here's you're making a movie and wants to be in it, which was sort of funny, you know. And I said, well, send him on back. And Bill Hitchcock walked in. Bill had, at the time, was a practicing magician. And he said so. And he had this patter, this constant yammering, which just suited Ralph's character. And I happened to have a deck of cards in my desk, so I tossed him a deck of cards, and he started doing card tricks. It just floored Ben and me. It was amazing watching this guy handle cards with all this patter. And I said, this is Ralph. So really the most difficult role to cast, just cast itself. He just walked in off the street, and there he was.
Now, what was it like finding the film's locations, especially in the main location in the film?
That was not a problem at all. The pool and the beach. My family owns this motel with the pool, and I had recently built and still owned the condos next door. So the screenplay was written for the locations. We had the locations first and wrote the screenplay for it. So the location just wasn't a problem.
How long was the shoot and what was the budget?
It was a 6-week shoot. We had 29 shooting days. And as I said, the budget was $84,000, but that was ludicrous. It wound up costing $450,000 to put it in the can, and then a couple of $100,000 on top of that for interest and prints and advertising.
I noticed on IMDb that you shot this film in chronological order. Why do you use that approach when shooting this film?
Generally speaking, the main reason for shooting out of sequence is when you have multiple scenes or shots using the same setup at the same location. So you don't have to move the camera and the lights and then come back and set them up again. But we didn't have any of that. Everything was different. And so we just started shooting, and we had an excellent professional crew of department heads headed by a guy named Peter Schnall, who was the DP. And they knew about movie making. I didn't know anything, so I relied on them, and it just evolved that way. We may have shot a little bit out of sequence, but basically it was in chronological order, and you know, it sort of helped with the actors and everybody coming along, watching the story and shooting it and watching it unfold, and somebody got killed and they're not there anymore. So it lent a good feel to the shoot by doing it that way.
Now, what was the most challenging scene that you had to film for The Mutilator?
I don't know, how long is this interview supposed to last?
We can go as long as...
I think the most challenging scenes involved a couple of the gags which did not work. The first one that comes to mind was... Linda, played by Connie Francis Rains, was supposed to be, she's floating in the pool where she and her boyfriend have been skinny dipping. She was floating on her back, and a spear from a spear gun is supposed to burst through her chest, blood gushing out, and the thing gets snatched back down and pulls her under. Well, it's a night scene. We were pressed for time. Daylight was not too far away, and we were sitting on the deck of the condo waiting for the special effects crew, and they came up, hat in hand, towed the carpet, and said, we got a problem with the the spear. And I said, what's the problem? And they said, it doesn't work. I said, oh no, man. And we're looking at the watches, we know what time the sun's coming up. And I just said, well, fuck it, we'll just drown her. And that's what we did, and we slowed it down, and it works well. That the first death, when when Linda gets drowned in the pool. It wasn't written that way. That's probably the one that was most problematical.
Now, I also noticed in the pool scene while doing research that you used milk in the pool.
Yeah, we needed to hide Big Ed. I mean, if the bad guy's in the water and you can see him, you're going to run away. So to do that, I just had them dump a bunch of milk in the pool, and it worked. You can't see under the water.
Yeah, I was surprised when I first saw that. Saying, "Wow!" It's like, "Wow!" You wouldn't think milk would work in a swimming pool to create a shadowy effect, but
well, it took a lot of milk.
What was your favorite moment on set?
That's an easy one. My favorite moment was the last night of shooting when the script girl. I was worried. I was so worried and about this thing that I quit smoking, but I went back on cigarettes for the last 3 weeks of the shoot. I was burning them 2 or 3 packs a day, and we were sitting in the living room. And this is a little bit that was shot out of sequence, because the gore, the bloody scenes, what they called the dance of death in the garage, where Sue got the gaff and got her head chopped off, and Ed and Pam fought with Big Ed, and they got in the car. All of that had been shot, but we were back in the living room shooting the scene right prior to that, when the three kids decided to go out. And along in there somewhere, the script girl leaned over and whispered in my ear. I'd been begging her, "Have we got it yet? Have we got it yet? Are we there?" She kept saying no. She leaned over and whispered in my ear, "We got it. We've got enough in the can that you've got your movie if we miss anything else." So that was a good moment for me.
Now, the film has some very good death scenes, as some of them came off as shocking. It's also, I think, one of the reasons why the film still has a following today. Tell me how you found your special effects team.
Anthony, I don't honestly remember how it got started. I think I put an ad in one of the Hollywood newspapers that run ads for actors and such. And I was contacted by a woman whose name I don't remember, and Mark Shostrom. And I was talking with them, and I liked the way Mark talked. And I just said, "Yeah, come on, do it." It was, as I say, I was naive, and that's probably not the way it usually happens, but it worked for us. Mark came with Anthony Chow, and we picked up Ed Farrell, and it went from there. Mark knew his stuff. He stopped on the way across and visited with Dick Smith, picked up a few pointers, got his recipe for movie blood, and Mark and Ed really got along well. Anthony left before the shoot was over, and Mark and Ed finished it up. In fact, they've stayed in touch through the years. Ed's pet name for Mark is Cappy. I don't know where that came from. That's just the way it happened. It just sort of fell into place once I said, "Come on."
One of the most unique things about this film is its theme song, as it has more of an upbeat tone compared to theme songs such as Halloween and A Nightmare on Elm Street, for example. Right. What made you decide to have a more upbeat song as the theme song for this film?
Takes place at the beach, and in this part of the country, eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, northeastern South Carolina, there is a dance called the shag, and it's the tempo typically is the tempo of that song. And I told Michael Menard about the theme song that I wanted a beach music type theme song because the kids were at the beach, so it just seemed like the thing to do. And he came up with that song. Incidentally, he got the guy who wrote the words, helped him write the words, also wrote the lyrics to Under the Boardwalk, which was a big hit beach tune in that era.
What was the writing process like?
The writing process, the writing went unbelievably well for what it is. I was practicing law, and I would come to work early. I'd get to work about 6, and I'd write for a couple of hours, and I would turn my dictation over to my secretary. He was a hell of a typist. She could type 120 words a minute. Then I'd practice law till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd pick up what my secretary had typed. I'd proofread it and give it back to her. And then the next morning, we'd do it over again. A couple of days, we did 10 pages a day several times. It just sort of happened. I mean, the characters sort of dictated what was going to happen. And it was easy. It was easy to write that screenplay.
Why did you go for more graphic tone for this film instead of the regular slasher tone films like Halloween and Friday the 13th?
As I said, I was a fan of horror movies and gore movies, and I decided to make this movie for the gore fans. I thought that the special effects would be an important element of the picture, and that's what we did. We made it for the gore fans. So you needed graphic gore for the gore fans.
One of the most shocking scenes in the film is the beginning of the film, with the main character as a kid killing his mother by accident. Yeah. What was your thought process when writing that scene? Because that really set the tone for the film.
I hope I was thinking that it would set the tone for the film. I don't really recall what my thought process was, except that the movie had to have a beginning, and typically that'll be a hook, no pun intended, and it just happened. It sort of tells what the movie is about, which I thought was important. I don't have any more recollection about it other than that.
I noticed through research that this film had trouble when submitted by to the MPAA, as they wanted multiple cuts of the film due to graphic nature. What was the process like dealing with the MPAA?
It was bad. It was really bad. The picture opened well in the Northeast and in LA and a couple other pockets, but after that, because the MPAA wouldn't give us a rating, they offered an X, and at that time an X rating meant porno, and as a result it was very difficult to get bookings in theaters, and it was very difficult for theaters to get advertising. Newspapers wouldn't run the ads, and so it became necessary to go back and get an R rating. And I went to a couple of the meetings. The MPAA has committees made up of volunteers from PTAs of the local schools. And this group of well-meaning parents watches the movie, and they have a discussion which is led by a couple of employees of the MPAA. And they tell you, this is too much. You can't do it. And if you ask them what is acceptable, there's no answer. They have no written rule. At the time, there were no written rules, no guidelines. You just have to start cutting and then go back and show it to them again. And they were merciless. If you've seen the R-rated version and the unrated version, you know what I'm talking about. They cut out all the stuff that we put in for the gore fans, where they made us cut it out. And they were overzealous. In fact, they insisted that we take out a shot that didn't exist. When Ralph gets a gig in the throat, they said the shot that shows the gig going through his flesh has got to come out. And I was in the editing room with the editor saying, it's not there. And I put the editor on the phone, and he talked to him. He finally convinced him that the shot did not exist. It was just movie magic. It decimated it. I was very unhappy about it. Nothing you can do.
Now, how did the uncut version of the film got found after being lost for years?
I had one copy for myself that somehow, when the time came, I could not find. Most of my stuff was stored in a storage room. It got broken into, and some stuff was stolen. And I think that one print got stolen. But I had saved all of the pieces that were cut out, and with Arrow Video, and we were working with Vinegar Syndrome in Bridgeport, I think, piecing it back together. When I remembered that when I applied for copyright registration, that I had filed a copy of the print for that purpose, which is required. If you register something, you have to send the best existing copy. And we had some answer prints from that weren't quite right. The timing was still off. The color was still off. But I took one of those prints and sent it to the Library of Congress. And I was working with Ewan Kent from Arrow Video. And I said, wait a minute, I got an idea. This thing is on file in D.C. Maybe we can get it. And he knew somebody who knew somebody at the Library of Congress. And that's what they did. They borrowed the Library of Congress copy, which was pristine and uncut. And that's what they do for the DVD.
A film that seemed to be lost for years didn't get rediscovered until 2016 when Arrow Video released the film uncut. How did the deal with Arrow Video come about?
I had been talking with different video companies for a few years, and I hadn't found anybody I was satisfied with. At the time, I was talking with representatives of Shout Factory, and I don't know how Arrow found me, but I got a call from Ewan Kent, and we talked for a minute, and I formed the opinion he was a straight shooter. We got along well, and we just agreed on the phone after a few minutes conversation. Okay, Arrow Video, you're the one. And Ewan flew over from London, and supervised most of the interviews, and got to know the place, got to know us. We got along well. Incidentally, and he. It was his idea, and he produced the. There's in the Arrow release. There's making of Fall Break with all the interviews, which was very good, I think. And even produced that, did all of that.
Now, what was it like getting most of the main players and crew for this documentary, and reminiscing about
it was easy, Anthony. We all had a really good time on the shoot. It was just relaxed. Everybody had fun. So when I called them, I said, Arrow Video is going to make a DVD. They'd like some interviews. Can you come? The people, let's see, Matt Mittler came from New York. I paid for his airfare, and some others came from North Carolina and around. And I gave them some travel expenses, and I think I paid them some money to come. I took my advance from Arrow Video for the release. About half of it went to having these people come, and it was a good time. Everybody had a good time getting together. Hadn't been together for a while. It wasn't a problem at all.
Now, you have an event coming up on May 4th in Atlantic Beach, North
That's
Carolina,
right.
Where you'll be returning to exact location to screen the
Yep.
Mutilator. How did the idea to screen the film at the exact location come about?
There's this guy, Kenny Caperton, from Durham, Chapel Hill area in North Carolina, who is a horror fan. He built a house a few years ago, which is an exact replica of Michael Myers' house. And he has a big Halloween bash every year, and he invites people to come. And I got to know him because he invited Ed and me up to one of his Halloween bashes. Well, what Kenny has started doing 6 months or so ago is going to the location of a horror film and putting on this thing he calls on-set screening. And the fans come, and they'll tour the locations, talk to the people. If he can get some of the people involved in the movie to come, they'll come, and they get to chat and talk. And it's interesting. He doesn't charge admission. I don't know how he gets his money, but he's the one who's doing it. He asked if we would participate. Yeah, sure. He's a good guy. And so we're going to be a meet and greet here at the motel. I'm at the Oceanana Motel in Atlantic Beach, which is next door to the condo. And we're going to have a meet and greet here. They're going to be some of the actors. Ed and I will be here, and then he's going to screen the movie in the driveway of the condo where everybody got killed, and people will be sitting around outside. That's about all I know about it.
Now, who will be in attendance for that screening?
From
the film.
Bill Hitchcock is coming. Connie Rogers, Ruth Martinez, now Totoro. We're hoping for Jack, but I haven't heard from him yet. Trace Cooper's going to come. He's the boy who shot his mother, and his mother, Pam, is going to be here. Jimmy Guthrie, the bartender in the bar scene, is a local guy. He's going to show up. And then Ed and I will be here.
Where can they find details on this event?
Yep. Myers House NC. I'll spell that. MYERSHOUSENC. All one word. MyersHouse.com/onset cinema.
Now, where can they find the Mutilator on social media? As I've seen an official page on Facebook and Instagram.
I do have a Facebook page. I think it's called Big Insane Ed or something like that. But I suppose if you go on Facebook and search Mutilator, that it'll pop up.
And also, you can follow it on Instagram at the Mutilator Shop. Now, what do you sell over there at the Mutilator Shop on Instagram?
We sell posters, 45s of the theme song. We sell storyboards. We sold out of Polaroid continuity shots and behind-the-scenes stills. I don't remember everything that's up there. It's pieces of soundtrack, odds and ends, just souvenirs. We had some molds, but they've been sold. Some interesting stuff if anybody's interested in the movie.
Yeah, it'll be at Instagram.com/The Mutilator Shop, or you can search The Mutilator on Instagram. And finally, are you surprised that The Mutilator still has a following to this game?
I am surprised. I am surprised. Yes, back when it first came out, it was a big hit in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I think it was popular there for about 6 weeks, and then it's been, people have talked about it, and I've always had fun with it. But yeah, to find out that people like it this far along is surprising.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on my show, Buddy Cooper.
Okay, anytime.
Have a good day.
Next time
And don't forget, on May 4th in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, they will be screening The Mutilator at...
It'll be near the Oceanata Motel.
You can find more information at MyersHouseNC.com/onset cinema. Well, thank you for coming on my show, and have a good day.
Okay, Anthony, thank you. See you later.
Besides Anthony T's Horror Show, you can also listen to these other fine podcasts on the Doc Discussions Network. Doc Discussions, hosted by Philip Perrone and Michael Darwin. You Know Nothing, Jon Snow, a Game of Thrones podcast. Bullets, Brothels, and Bots, a Westworld podcast. Halloween Boutique, Psychotronic Reviews. And Searching for American Gods. You can find Doc Discussions on the web at www.docdiscussions.com. And Doc Discussions is also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify.
Want to learn more about horror directors? With a lighthearted look at 3 of their movies? Meet fearless podcaster Gore Blimey.
I've been unsettled by bats in the past and startled by parrots, and I've even been known to jump at the odd cockatoo.
Discover horror films that are classics, and others, too.
There's a topless aerobics massacre, an exploding rock singer, cannibals, nude martial arts, a deep-fried prostitute.
But it's not all silliness. You'll get proper movie breakdowns, opinion, and background information, too.
Yep, in the 80s and 90s, Jeff Stryker was huge in gay porn. In every sense.
So if you're a horror film fan, come and check out the Trilogy of Terror podcast at strangeanddeadly.com, or find it on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or on your podcatcher.
One of those people that has a certain charisma and a certain style, and I'm just hoping one day he'll rub off on me.
The Trilogy of Terror podcast, where we try 3 times harder to give you the willies.
Welcome back to Anthony T's Horror Show. I'm here to debut a new segment to the show called the Indie Roundup. Now, this segment will feature reviews of indie horror films that are currently on the festival circuit and or DVD and Blu-ray. And the first film is Richard Powell's short film Hang Up. The film is about a guy who answers a call from his wife only to find out what is really going on in her mind, and gets a disturbing look into it. This was a very demented and intense film. Even though it's only monologue driven, one of the reasons why this film works very well was Richard Powell's direction. First, he had to make sure that Robert Nolan's performance only consisted on his facial expressions, which adds to the level of dread that this short film has. The other thing that I liked about Powell's direction in this film was the fact that he does a great job helping direct the performance of the monologue, as he makes sure that the delivery of the monologue is so frightening and so terrifying that it really generates a shocking response. Because literally I was really shocked at what was going on with this monologue, as this helped to really make his story very disturbing and quite frankly very uneasy to watch. I would have to say it's probably his most uneasy film to date. He also gets very good performances from Robert Nolan, who is a regular in Richard Powell's short films, as I think he's been in all of his short films with the exception of his debut short film Consumption. He's very good in this film, even though he doesn't have a line to speak in the film. He does a very good job conveying his character through the various and frightening facial expressions, as it really helped made the story very downright disturbing. The film also has a very good performance from Astrida Orza, as she does a very good job making sure her character makes the dialogue that was put in front of her very disturbing in the way she approaches the character, because there were some things where there were just chills down my spine, literally, because this is definitely a frightening film to watch. Hang Up is a very chilling and, quite frankly, intense film from start to finish, as it has great performances from Robert Nolan and Astrid Orza, and great direction from Richard Powell. I would definitely recommend you check this film out when it hits a film festival near you. If I had to give it out of 5 stars, I would definitely give this film 5 stars, because this film is shocking. Even though there's no main action sequence in the film, it's the performances and Powell's direction that drives this film home. Definitely check this film out at a film festival near you. I'll give it 5 stars out of 5. Now, the next film that I'm going to talk about is the feature film Clickbait from Michael J. Epstein and Sophia Cassiola. According to the film synopsis on IMDb, the film is about a college student who will do just about anything for internet fame, is kidnapped by a fan, and her reluctant roommate is the only one who can save her in this horror satire of popularity culture. Now, Clickbait is a very good film. I have to say this. This was a fun 75-80 minute film from directors Michael J. Epstein and Sophia Cassiola. One of the things the directors do a very good job in this film is to make sure that all the weirdness that goes on is good and humorous, because this is a weird film. This is not your run-of-the-mill social media horror film. as this is more of a satirical type of horror film, which offers a humorous take on the social media craze and how everything is addictive. But one of the things that I really liked about Clickbait was the fact that this had a surrealistic tone to it. I think it made the humor in this film work so well, as it kept me interested with the film's story, while it was also diving into issues like commercialism and social media. But what really I think makes this film very good was the fact that there was really two good lead performances in this film from Kobe Stewart and Brandy Aguilar. They both were great in this film. This is one of those films that relies on chemistry, and I thought both of those actresses did a very good job in making sure their characters are interesting, and also helped the dynamic between the two characters, because if the dynamic between those two characters don't work, then some of this surrealistic tone, this odd humor this film has, doesn't work. But both Kobe Stewart and Brandy Aguilar, they did a very good job making sure their characters were entertaining, and the chemistry they had with each other is picture perfect, because it really helped drive this film to being a very good and entertaining indie art house type of horror film. It's something that you definitely should check out on the film festival circuit. If you're into indie horror that's surrealistic, then definitely check this film out, because it has some great performances in it as well. As both of those actresses did a great job playing off of each other, it really helped drive home the whole obsession with social media theme that this film was going for. And it also really helped that it had a good screenplay as well from Jeremy Long and Michael J. Epstein. I thought this screenplay was very good. I like how the fact that they really go into the dangers of vlogging in a more humoristic way, as this could have been a straight up horror film, but I don't know if it would have had the same effect that this film does, because if this was a straight up horror film, then probably this wouldn't have not as worked as well as Clickbait did with the humor and everything. It's definitely a credit to the writers of the film and the very good direction from Michael J. Epstein and Sofia Coppola. I definitely highly recommend you check this film out. This film has great performances from Kobe Stewart and Brandy Aguilar, plus also some really good direction from Michael J. Epstein and Sofia Coppola. Check this film out if it's playing at a film festival near you. I give Clickbait 5 stars. And that wraps up the first edition of the Indie Roundup. You will hear the segment from time to time on the show, as it'll be one of the many rotating segments on the show. So if you enjoy it, don't worry, it will be coming back. So I'll be back with my film recommendation. You can find Anthony T's Horror Show on social media on these platforms. Facebook at facebook.com/Anthony T's Horror Show. Twitter at www.twitter.com/Anthony T's Horror. On Instagram at www.instagram.com/Anthony T's Horror Show. On YouTube at www.youtube.com/Anthony Thurber. And you can find Anthony T's Horror Show on the web as well at anthonytshorrorshow.blogspot.com. And you can also find Doc Discussions at www.docdiscussions.com. For my film recommendation this episode, I'm definitely going to recommend The Mutilator. I had Buddy Cooper earlier on the episode talking about this 1985 slasher film. Now, this was pretty much a no-brainer since he came on the show, and the fact that I really loved this film a lot. This is one of those horror films that got lost in the shuffle in the mid-80s, where he had a great run of horror films that came out. But thankfully, over the years, this film has developed a cult following, and I truly believe that this film is a very underrated film. One of the reasons why this film is underrated is the fact that this film has very good direction from Buddy Cooper. He does a great job keeping an intense feel to the film, whether it is the way he handles the kill scenes in the film or the way he approaches the screenplay. Everything's done in a manner where you're kept on edge and have this tense feel throughout the film, which some of the films that was released in that period didn't have. This film has some crazy kill scenes that make this film very intense to watch, as I think the film was ahead of its time. He also has a very good cast as well, which helped with the overall story of the film. But the main thing that Buddy Cooper does very well in this film is he makes sure that this film sets its tone from the beginning. I really think this is what helps make this film very good. And plus the film has a good theme song that you would not see in other horror films, as it has a more upbeat tone, which may fool you into thinking this is a horror comedy, but I'm telling you right now, this film is not a horror comedy. This is more like a gory slasher film that never lets up until the final credits. I definitely recommend you check The Mutilator out, whether it's on Shudder or on Blu-ray courtesy of Arrow Video. If you're a fan of the slasher genre like I am, then definitely check out The Mutilator. There's no reason that you shouldn't check this film out, as I truly believe it's one of the great underrated horror movies in the 1980s. So check out The Mutilator, aka Full Break, and remember, you're gonna have a good time. Now, I haven't had any time to make new videos, as I want to get this episode out before the end of this month, so I can fulfill my promise of 3 episodes in April. There's no new YouTube content to speak of, but there's something I want to speak of. It's the fact that I will be at ScareCon New England. You may have noticed that I've been talking about ScareCon New England lately here on Anthony T's Horror Show. And the reason for that is I will have a table at ScareCon New England, so you will get to meet me finally, as I will have some stuff there for all you people to enjoy. Trust me, you will not have to pay a thing, because I view this as more of a hobby than to some other podcasters. But still, I want to also promote the show too, because I want to get as many listeners as possible for either the podcast or my YouTube channel. So I will be at ScareCon New England having a table there. I will have stuff there. I will not charge anything for stuff there. So think of it as free stuff. What do I have? I'm not telling you yet, because I want to kind of keep it a secret until the ScareCon preview show. Then I'll unveil what I'm bringing to ScareCon New England. I promise I did bring stuff other than business cards, so you will get some nice stuff at my table for no charge at all, because this is all going to help promote my show. And you finally get a chance to meet me in person. I'll be in my booth whenever I can, because I'm also going to get interviews for the show as well. So I'll probably have some sort of time period where I'll be at my booth. I haven't come up with a schedule yet. I'm just waiting on a few things before I set my schedule. I probably won't reveal that until the ScareCon preview show, so you will get to see me at ScareCon New England for the first time. With that, I'll wrap up my show for this episode. I want to thank Buddy Cooper for coming on to the show. And remember, hashtag horror is healthy and support indie horror.